so caffeine actually blocks adenosine receptors so you don't feel sleepy. By blocking adenosine, we also indirectly boost things like dopamine and norepinephrine, which help us increase alertness and focus while reducing our perception of physical exertion during tasks like exercise. Hey there, I'm Dr. Mark, and over the past 5 years, I've had the privilege of getting to work with nearly 400 people a year, from NCAA swimmers to professional hockey players to high school footballers to grandparents to entrepreneurs and everyone in between. And the whole game has been helping them perform at their peak, recover from concussions and the demands of their sports. On this channel, we talk about concussion recovery, athletic performance, nutritional strategies, and recovery techniques to help you perform at your peak and recover faster. And today we're diving into the use of caffeine as a pre-game or pre-practice booster and how it can improve your performance without relying on overcomplicated and chemically supplements. That's a technical term. So by the end of this video, we're going to cover how caffeine works for athletes, its impacts on performance, so specifically benefits in focus, strength, and speed. And then we're going to talk about how to use caffeine effectively for peak performance while avoiding common mistakes related to sleep and recovery. So to jump right in, let's talk about how caffeine works in your brain and your muscles. So in the brain, caffeine blocks receptors called adenosine receptors. And so adenosine is this neurotransmitter that's responsible for making you feel tired and sleepy. As we go throughout the day and we burn up ATP, adenosine triphosphate, we build up adenosine. And that adenosine, I describe it as like you're filling a bucket with sand, and that bucket gets heavier and heavier and heavier. And as you fill that bucket with adenosine, you get sleepier and sleepier and sleepier. So adenosine drives your sleep pressure, or your sleep drive, whatever you want to call it. And so caffeine actually blocks adenosine receptors so you don't feel sleepy. By blocking adenosine, we also indirectly boost things like dopamine and norepinephrine, which help us increase alertness and focus while reducing our perception of physical exertion during tasks like exercise and sports performance. So it's kind of jargony. Let's keep it going. Let's go with muscle effects. So in terms of muscle effects, caffeine also increases calcium release at muscles, and calcium is part of what helps the contraction of your muscles and enhances force production during those contractions. So the result of caffeine increasing calcium is that you get more efficient muscle contractions, meaning you get to generate more power during explosive movements like sprinting, jumping, skating, lifting, things like that. So if it's not already intuitive and that was too heady, the benefits for athletes are great. We've got improvements in fatigue and game performance, endurance, strength, power, agility, speed, focus, and pain suppression. So from a fatigue and game performance standpoint, athletes, I was an athlete, I still am kind of an athlete, just kind of washed up. But athletes push their limits during games and practices and skill drills, and caffeine can help offset the perceived fatigue, allowing you to perform despite actually kind of getting tired. From an endurance standpoint, sort of secondary to that, caffeine improves aerobic performance by 2 to 3%. And so this is especially important in things like team sports, soccer, basketball, ice hockey, where there's prolonged performance. You can even think about endurance events like running and cycling, where you need this sustained effort, and that aerobic boost really, really helps. Classically, from sort of the stimulant standpoint, you can also think about strength and power. Caffeine can boost peak power output, increasing your vertical jump height by like 2 to 4%, and it helps you perform faster and stronger in just explosive movements. Think sprinting to the basket, powering through a tackle. That power from muscle contractions is really beneficial. And then assuming you're well rested, we'll talk about that in a different video, but assuming you're well rested, caffeine can enhance your sprint times and sport-specific agility, particularly fast-changing directions, football, hockey, tennis, things like that. And then from a focus and pain suppression standpoint, this is really useful for sort of the grit of the game. So caffeine helps athletes stay focused during critical movements and suppresses pain perception during intense physical activity. So this can boost your performance without feeling fatigued or uncomfortable. You can kind of grind through it in the third period or overtime or sort of after mile 13 in the marathon. So how do we use caffeine to optimize our sports performance? Think about simple sources versus super convoluted pre-workouts. You don't need all the crap that's in those. So opt for simple things. Black coffee, you can actually get gums and mints now that have caffeine in them for a consistent dose with fewer chemicals than energy drinks like Monster, 5 Hour Energy, things like that. The sources are going to be easier on your stomach. You're going to avoid jitters. You're not getting all the extra sugars. You're not getting all the extra kind of processed gunk. You can be just a clean athlete and get the benefits of caffeine without the, I was going to say goodies, but they're not very good for you. From a dosage standpoint, if you want to get really specific, take your weight in pounds and convert it to kilograms. If you're anywhere outside the US, just take your weight in kilograms. And you're aiming for 3 to 6 milligrams per kilogram. I live in the US and I have a US audience. That's about 200 to 400 milligrams for a 150-pound athlete. And honestly, I wouldn't go much higher than that. In the research, you want to avoid going over 9 milligrams per kilogram to reduce the side effects like crazy jitteriness, increased heart rate, and gastrointestinal side effects. But generally speaking, 400 milligrams is the cap you would want to take per day. There's sleep and performance and all kinds of benefits to staying within like 100 to 300 milligrams. Timing it, you really would want to do this about an hour before your exercise or an hour before your event for peak performance. If you are using something like a mint or a gum, you can actually do that like 5, 10, 15 minutes before your performance because it's just going straight into the submucosa. It's going straight into your body versus having to go through the gut and the liver and then get to your body. Now, let's say you have an evening game or a practice, something starting 7:30, 8:30, or even later, and you need to perform, but you don't want to mess up your sleep too badly. Aim for the lower dose. So we've got that 3 to 6 milligram per kilogram range. Aim for the 3 milligram per kilogram range. You're going to enhance the performance and sort of minimize the effects on sleep. And if you have the option, I would use a caffeine gum or a caffeine mint, and I would use 100 milligrams, so sort of the lowest dose with performance benefits, because the effects are going to be shorter lived. You're just straightly absorbing it, and it's going to minimize the sleep deficits or the sleep impairments, which is going to ultimately improve your performance. So for folks who are habitual coffee drinkers or habitual caffeine consumers, there's a mild decrease in the performance benefits from caffeine. And so some people think, well, what if I cycle it and before an event I actually stop caffeine and then take it again so I get the benefits back? That is a strategy, but honestly, the performance deficits are so minimal that you probably don't want to do it. And the withdrawal of caffeine kind of really sucks. So the symptoms of withdrawal don't necessarily outweigh the benefits of bringing it back in. You might as well just keep drinking your regular coffee. Now, say you're someone who's trying caffeine for the first time and you're realizing after the first couple mints or the first couple gums or the first couple coffees that you try, you get really jittery, but you do kind of like the performance benefits. To offset the jitters, you can combine with a supplement called L-theanine. L-theanine is a non-protein amino acid that sort of works synergistically with caffeine to improve performance and all kinds of stuff. That could be a whole separate video. But aiming for around 200, 250 milligrams of L-theanine with your cup of coffee, with your mint, with your gum, with whatever, can give you the performance benefits without the jitters. All right, so to wrap this up, caffeine provides an extra boost for explosive activities. Vertical jumps, sprints, strength efforts. It also helps with focus and pain tolerance during critical moments, during sort of the struggle of sport, of training. And for endurance, agility, and skill drills, skill performance, there's benefits, but more limited benefits than the explosive stuff. Caffeine can be effective in the right context, but long-term success does ultimately come from proper recovery, sleep, and consistent training. So don't use caffeine as a cop-out to just get the burst. So, do you rely on caffeine or pre-workouts for your games or practices? How does it help you? Drop a comment, let me know below. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to do the YouTube things, like, subscribe, hit the bell, do all that fun stuff. Until next time, I'm Dr. Mark.